who have honest questions about faith.
I haven't even wrestled through this topic myself.
Reason for your faith.
Well, welcome to Unapologetic. This is conversations about how to confidently share the reason for the hope that you have in your everyday life. My name's Tim, and I'm here with Jonathan Gullo. And this is a collaboration between YesHeIs and Sophos Ministries. And so that's why you're here, Jono, because you are the founder and would we call you the CEO of Sophos Ministries?
It sounds super impressive. It's very early days, but we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. So tell us a bit more about Sophos Ministries and what you guys are all about.
Okay, so obviously the heart behind it essentially is twofold. It's one, to be able to share the gospel in a unique way, and also to, I guess, help grow Christians in their faith and trust in God. So, and it's obviously through this unique lens of apologetics, which is seemingly in this day and age there's a growing interest. And to be honest, I think that goes hand in hand with the growing need. We've got a lot of time to get into this. But so this started with the idea of we were tired of seeing, at least in the first stage, Christian kids who grew up in Christian homes, maybe going to Christian schools, went to uni, and they got hit with a bunch of hard questions, and they had no grounding for their faith. They couldn't answer it, and then they kind of threw their faith out. And so we're like, there's some good reasons to believe. And so let's just do something on university campuses. So that's where we started, and it's kind of been growing from there. So it's been going for maybe 2.5, 3 years now.
Yep. And so there's kind of two arms to it, right? There's Sophos, which is like that training and equipping people in apologetics, but then there's Logos.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about Logos? Because I love this.
Great. So Logos Forums is how it originally started. So we just started doing events on uni campuses.
Yeah.
And pretty much.
Remember the first time you told me about this?
On.
I think you used the word fight night.
Did I?
I don't know. Maybe that's just in my head.
Well,
it's got this edgy feel to it.
Well, that's what people think, which is why we didn't want to do that. And I think a lot of people thought when it came to questions of faith, people interested, around apologetics, often people think in terms of, say, your culture wars and all the areas people disagree. Yeah. And we wanted to avoid that. We're like, are there any spaces for genuine seekers, curious uni students, or anyone really, who have honest questions about faith, about God, about existence, like the deeper stuff, not the surface level culture war things. And so we just started hosting events at universities, and we started inviting students along, and then we would invite professors to come and let's have a conversation. And so we'd sit in a lecture theatre or somewhere in a common space at university, invite, and it would be around a topic. We get the students to pick the topic, and we'd just sit and, I guess you could say, debate, but it wasn't argumentative. It was like you'd share your opinion, we'd share ours, and go back and forth.
Robust conversation.
And then students got to see it, and then we'd take questions from the floor.
Because you do live.
We do it live,
isn't it?
We do it live, and it's actually amazing. We've been waiting for it to go bad, and it hasn't. It seems as though there's the feedback we've had repeatedly from professors and lecturers from the unis there's no spaces like this anymore where radically different worldviews can come in a healthy, respectful environment and discuss and debate, and there be curiosity rather than it descending into fights, and arguments. And so that's where it started. And then we realized, man, that maybe there's another side to this where Christians need to grow and learn how to do this and to understand it's good for their faith. And so we're like, look, we have to differentiate between the two because we don't want to go, surprise, it's a Christian thing. So Logos Forums is for everyone. Yeah. Sure, we host them, but they're not a Christian event.
And this is what also you said, I think a real testament to the heart and soul of Logos is that half the team that run these events are non-Christians. Yeah. And they love it, right?
Yeah. And that's I think part of the beauty of this. There's uniqueness to it because everyone's got a brain, and I think a lot of times before people are willing to engage with things maybe at a deeper heart level, particularly in the age we live in, people are engaging at the brain level, and God gave us all brains, all of us. And so we've found at least 50% of the team that helps at universities, they don't yet have a faith. And that's why we didn't want to be sneaky about it. We're like, look, let's make the Logos Forum that's a public communal event. But then we're like, Sophos Ministries, I guess you could say the parent body, the overarching ministry, that uniquely the Sophos events are for Christians that help train in apologetics. Yeah. And then we help to run Logos Forum events. So, hey, if you're keen to run one, it's coming to a university near you soon.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And like you say, there's such a need for it. Like at YesHeIs, we're in the inboxes every day, like on our socials, and our team just are always getting questions from people. Hey, my friend's saying this, or I haven't even wrestled through this topic myself as a Christian. Like, how am I meant to talk to people about this? There's this real sort of like fear about it, I think, but also like a curiosity. And I think, like you say, like a growing interest in culture now. It's just like, hey, like, what is the truth? And as Christians, like, we need to be able to really articulate that. But it can be a real struggle. I wanted to start by reading this community comment from what we got in an inbox, because I think it really just frames like our whole conversation. This person says, I don't know if this makes sense, but a friend of mine told me that the God of the Old Testament is very cruel and completely opposite to the Jesus of the New Testament. He said it not as a question, but statement. This is how it is. I couldn't say anything, but all I could say is that he is absolute and he is what he is, like talking about God. I've experienced him and I know he's true. But honestly, I didn't know how to confront my friend or defend myself.
Wow.
How's that last line, hey?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know how to confront my friend or just defend myself. And I feel like this just so like captures the heart of like what we really want to do with this short video series. We're not going to cover everything. We're not going to give you all the answers, but what I really hope is that for everyone listening, that we can just really like at least give you some like next steps.
Definitely.
And I guess a bit of confidence about, we're going to talk through some really practical things. But just like hitting those barriers of like, I don't know what to say. I feel this actually in myself,
Big time,
so much about,
same.
like, I've started to get into these topics, but it always hits this point of like, oh man, there's just so much info out there, and how do I remember it, and how do I not offend people? There's that fear of confrontation, whole like brain going to mush, like I'm reading the book, being like fist pumping the air, being like, yes, this is the best. And then I get into a conversation and it's like,
or it's like after a conversation where you got owned and you're driving home from it, like, I should
have said that. And you remember all the things. 100%. So we're going to hit a bunch of topics over the next few episodes. And these will be things like proof of the resurrection. Can I trust the Bible? What's the proof for the existence of God? If God is good, why is there pain and suffering? What is truth, like objective and subjective truth? But what I love about our conversations in preparation for this is our heart is not just to give like the goods, like we'll give some great information. But what I'd encourage everyone listening is to peel back the layers and use that as a starting point. But what I've heard from you, Jono, is just a bunch of really good approaches. Like, how do I think about this when I'm approaching this topic? Like, what hat do I need to put on to approach this? Because I think there's some real specific approaches to some of these topics that are really important. So we really hope it's going to be practical for everyone, and really just encouraging for you in your everyday life and in your day-to-day conversations. So should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right. So let's start with this, like, what is apologetics? It's a big word. It's maybe a bit of a scary word, but I'd love for you to just unpack, like, what is apologetics and why should we care about it?
Okay, well, the term apologetics comes from a Greek word, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce properly, but essentially it means to give a defense. And it comes from the first epistle of Peter, 3 verse 15, where he says, always be prepared to give a defense for anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that you have. And so the Greek word for to give a defense is what we get the English word apologetic. So a lot of people think is apologetics about saying sorry for your faith, and it's not. It's actually to give a reasoned argument or reasoned defense for it, to show and I love to use that word. He says, be prepared to give an answer, or to give a defense for the reason for the hope that you have. So he talks about there's got to be reason for the hope that you have. And this is where I think the first part people get confused, both in the faith community and outside of it, is I think reason and faith, are two separate things. But we see this picture over and over in Scripture that they go hand in hand. To have faith does not mean you throw out your brain and to throw out reason. Reason's actually a gift from God. And it's one of the ways that we can wrap our head around some of the mystery and the beauty that is in belief in God. So at its core, apologetics is about learning to give a defense, give a reason for the hopes you have. Wrap your brain around that, figure some things out, give a good answer. So if someone asks you, why do you believe? You've got some answer, some defense to give. So that's right at its core.
And that word defense, can you just unpack maybe the difference between that and like being defensive?
Yeah. And in fact, that's more of an important question than you realize. In an age where no doubt there's so much content now, I mean, we're contributing to it right now, you know, there's often this idea that it's an us versus them thing, and you're in this line, someone else is on the other side, and you've got to make a reasoned argument and win. But that's not the spirit we see behind that word that Peter's trying to get across here. And you actually see that as he goes on, he says, make sure you do this with gentleness and respect, you know. Yeah. So in other words, it's not just about giving an argument and winning an argument. It's also about how we go about sharing our reasons. It's like your tact and your tone. I'm sure we'll unpack that a little bit. And it's not losing your witness in the middle of it. I mean, we've all probably had experiences of someone maybe sharing a Christian truth, but the way in which it was shared, it just undermines the whole message. You know, I say all the time to people who bother to listen to it, you know, truth in the absence of love sounds like hate. Yeah. And so a lot of, you know, Christianity makes some pretty big truth claims. It's obviously a faith that holds on to, we have some absolute truths, and that, which is a radical claim in this modern era. But, you know, when Jesus, this is such a challenging thought to me, when Jesus was getting his disciples ready to go, you know, as like sheep amongst wolves and, you know, to share in the world their faith, he used this term, he says, you've got to be as wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. Yeah. Where I think often we get that wrong, we become as wise as a dove and gentle as a serpent, you know? So I think a good apologetic not just considers what is right and true, but it's also, how do I do this? And being discerning of the approach to someone and someone's environment and situation. It's not about winning an argument as that, you know? It's giving reason for the hope that you have. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's great. What about this idea of like evidence and like, I think the burden that I feel in this space is like, I've got to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row and that I've got this like critical mass of evidence that I'm going to like deliver to this person as like a well-packaged kind of delivery. Yeah. And that's going to get them across the line of faith. What's this? How do we deal with that? And like, is that what's needed? Like,
yeah, and this, you know, I know we give an introduction here about what is apologetics. That's a good place to start. This isn't about getting more information and about thinking your way to belief. Yeah, I think if we begin with this idea that, you know, faith in God or Christianity is this completely airtight, gotcha, we win. Well, everyone be Christian because it all make total sense, but clearly not everyone's a Christian. And you ask any Christian that's honest, you know, I got questions, you know? Yeah. So I think what we see, and we see this not in our own stories, but even in the early days of the Christian faith that we see through the New Testament, is doubt and faith have always gone hand in hand. And good argument and good reason for faith will always get you to a point, right? So Peter's saying you've got to have a reason for the hope you have. Reason can take you so far to the point where faith is necessary. And I don't care who you are. Say that again. Reason and good argument can take you to a point to where faith is necessary.
So it's not the whole thing.
It can't be. And if it was, you know, Christianity would just be some intellectual assent, but it's not. God in his sovereignty has seen it necessary for there to be an element where we have to trust him. We have to believe. So, okay, let's get specific about this, you know, and we're not just making this up. This was there at the beginning. If you think about Thomas, okay, what was Thomas famous for?
Doubting.
Right. The old doubting Thomas.
Imagine that being known as throughout history as.
Well, I think Thomas gets a bad rap, and I'm conscious, you know, for a lot of us, you know, we have doubts, and sometimes maybe we avoid that. But Thomas was pretty upfront about it. And what did he say? What was he looking for before he believed?
Unless I see the wounds in Jesus' hands, his feet, spear mark in his side.
So what's he asking for?
I'm not going to believe. He's asking for evidence.
For evidence. And aren't we all, right? Yep. So he's going, all the guys were believing, and he's like, I need to see the evidence for myself, you know? And they told him, we saw him alive. And he's like, I don't know. Yeah. So Jesus, in his gracious love, he meets him, gives him the evidence. He goes, check out my hands and my feet, you know? Pretty powerful moment. And then Thomas didn't go, it all makes sense now. If you think of his language, he straight away he said, my Lord and my God. So he went straight to worship, that this is your God. Yeah. So it's like he took this leap from just evidence to then faith. And then if you recall, you know, Jesus said, look, you believe because you've seen
the evidence. Yeah.
You've seen the evidence. And then he said something so profound. He goes, blessed are those who don't see and yet believe.
Yeah.
Now think of that. Because all the men in the room then, they saw, and in some ways, they had something taken from them because they no longer had the choice to believe because they saw it. It was the resurrected Jesus was right in front of them.
Yeah.
And Jesus was saying, you guys see because you believe. He goes, but blessed is everyone like you and I who we haven't seen but yet believed. And why is that? Again, Jesus thought faith was necessary in order to have the existence and the relationship he has with mankind. He saw it imperative that we had choice. And so if God could have just made it clear as day, and I'm sure a lot of people go, why didn't just God make it easier? God saw it fit. In his wisdom, that's not how this is going to work. There needs to be that element where you're free to choose. So you're free, you're a free agent. And his disciples, in a way, he kind of took that freedom from them because you guys have seen.
Yeah.
He goes, blessed is everyone who believes and doesn't see. So you and I are blessed. We have a blessing that the first followers of Jesus don't have.
Do you know, that's just making me think because that relates to love, right? Because again, if God programmed us to love him, it's like, well, that's not love. Like he's left a gap.
You've got it.
And so we have to choose to love him, but that's what he wants. And I feel like, and I'm drawing lines here, but we say speak the truth in love, the truth being maybe the evidence, but we've got to leave that gap of love, and we can't just push people across the line or just give them this undeniable airtight argument. No. We've got to leave that gap and just be okay with that. Because, if we look at that story, like Jesus, like, and God the Father is okay with that. That's how he's designed it.
Yeah.
Which actually makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, it's not, I should approach this topic, but I don't have to have all the ducks in the row. I don't have to have this sort of airtight, undeniable argument.
That's a huge point, Tim. Like if you think, again, returning to Peter's encouragement, he says, always be prepared, to give an answer to anyone who asks you for the hope that you have. Right. So in other words, you don't have to have the whole gamut, of all the answers, of all the reasons. He goes, but you should know why you believe. Right. And don't give some, cliched Christianese thing, like give reason for it. Like think through this. He literally uses the word, he says, be prepared for this. Like give it some time and thought. And so that's why I think it's not about feeling like apologetics is, I've got all the answers, I've got the gotcha moments, I win.
Yeah.
No, you need to be able to give a defense for why you believe, why you have hope. Yeah. Which begs, a previous question is, are you living in such a way that begs people to ask you the question?
Yeah, living a questionable life.
Yeah, no, I wish we came up with that. It's such a good thought though, right? Like, Jesus talked about letting your light shine so people see your light that you're shining and go, who is this God you worship, And so that's a challenge. If no one's asking you, what's different? What's the hope about you? That's a problem, But beyond that, I think it takes the pressure off with apologetics. This is why maybe a lot of people don't engage with this conversation. Like, that's for maybe academics. It's not. Sure, there's a beautiful academic part, but C.S. Lewis is such a beautiful thinker in this regard. And I'm going to butcher this statement, so I'll paraphrase it. Something along the lines of, the gospel mystery, it's so deep. The gospel and scripture and who God is it's so deep that your most profound mystic will be swimming in its waters forever. But it's also simple and approachable enough that the youngest child can play in its shallows.
Oh, beautiful.
Isn't that a great picture? And so I just encourage people, listen, you don't have to feel like you're an academic, you got all the degrees, read all the books, but you got to do something so you do have some reason, like give some preparedness for why you have hope. And so if someone asks you, you're not just giving an answer that other Christians get. You actually have something that makes sense to the question asker.
Love that. Can we start to get really practical then? Because I'd never really thought of it from that perspective. I've read this verse a whole bunch of times, but that the you have moment, always be prepared to give the reason for the hope that you have. To me, like a lot of what we talk about at YesHeIs is start with your story. And that your story has that cool kind of element, which is like you can't really argue with your story and your experience. But perhaps then it can start to get into this like, well, your truth, my truth. Well, that's great for you, And so I love that idea of, okay, well, we all have a story, but maybe how can we sort of go in concentric circles out from that and go, okay, well, what are the reasons for this hope that I have? What can you say to that? Like, what's some real practical things that people can do to start exploring that?
Look, part of this is this practice. It's not just good for the people that you share your faith with. It's good for your own spiritual growth and nourishment.
Yeah.
So if there are things that trouble you, like probably the questions you've got are different than the questions I've got.
Yeah.
And I might be at peace with some mysteries that really still trouble you and vice versa. So if there are things in your life like you believe and you got this wrestle, let there be a cue for you to like go dig a little, like read a little, like ask some questions, find some people who've got over the line there, because that helps you to find a deeper footing for your faith, why you believe. Like, you know, I've got 2 little kids. They've been raised in a Christian home. You know, they've got a child's version of faith at the moment. What I'm trying to do though is prepare them, you know, not just to have my faith. They're going to have their own questions one day, right? And so I want to help give them tools and permission to have honest doubts and to chase that down, and to get the questions for themselves, because they're a unique person, and so is every person listening today. We have a unique makeup, and so you have your story. Somewhere along the lines, the lights came on for you, and whilst not maybe everything makes cognitive sense, you can't shake. There's been in the words of John Wesley, you know, your heart's been strangely warmed, and this whole faith thing makes sense. So it's like, all right, now I'm going to start to pull the thread a little bit and like, okay, why did this make sense to me? And you start to get some reason for your faith. Yeah. So you don't throw your brain out. And I'm a big believer in this. And again, this isn't to say this is an intellectual belief, but certainly Jesus said we're to love our God with our mind. Yeah. So I just wonder sometimes of when it comes to why we believe, we've often left our brain out of the conversation. Yeah. Bring it back in. Yeah. This is a tool that could be a blessing to the people in your world. And so explore the reasons. So again, when the question comes, you're not trying to give a reason for the whole faith. Now, some people are gifted for that. Some might have, and we'll get into that in more podcasts for those who want to go even deeper into this. But you should at least have 2 to 3 reasons that are beyond just, I feel like it and I experienced it, which is part of it, but just something beyond that. Yeah. And to give a defense for, do you have reason for belief? Yeah. Actual reason that goes hand in hand with belief. That's a big challenge.
Picked up on something you said there, because we have our story and then we have like what got me across the line, like in a positive sense, like what were the things that propelled me into faith? And so those are some threads that you can pull. But you also said doubts. Do you think that both of those are equally valuable as threads to pull? Because it's like we don't have everything together. We don't all know everything. And so for me, it was like, well, yeah, I think the thing that got me across the line of faith in like the warmth of my heart is that I felt like Jesus was a friend. Wow. I was pretty lonely at school. I was bullied a lot. And so when the thing that got me across the line of faith was like, am I going to believe what people say about me? Wow. Or am I going to believe what I know Jesus says about me? Because I was brought up in church. I knew it all, but that was the rubber hit the road moment. So that's one area I could explore apologetically, like what are the concentric circles out from that. But then another one that sort of, I'm trying to work out how it's related to my story specifically, but I've just been so curious about creation and like A Case for a Creator, the book by Lee Strobel. I can't quote you much from that. I try and quote it sometimes and just completely mince it, but I love it. Like that book, I just like tore it apart because I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, and I couldn't believe that there was actual there's actual scientists that be like, yeah, I think there's intelligent design. Like that, this can't just, be evolution or whatever it is. So yeah, but that was sort of like almost not a doubt that I had, but like a real like, I'm not sure about like what is the evidence for that. Yeah. So do you think it's sort of helpful to pursue both things?
I think you touched on something so important. Doubt is a bad word often for Christians. Yeah. Well, I think we need to reclaim it. Yeah. And use the word in their curiosity, and that's everyone's talking about that these days. But I think it's a beautiful virtue within faith. And so instead of being fearful of your doubts, and there's a lot of good reason why we doubt. You say people have unanswered prayer. Yeah. And so then people are like, well,
bad experiences.
Yeah, all that stuff. So people, good reasons. Well, we have reasons for our hope. We can also have reasons for our doubt. So if you're bold and courageous enough, like explore that. See what's on the other end of it. Be curious enough about it. To be honest with you, the parts where in many cases, my faith has grown, and I would say been most resilient and deep, and I've experienced something unique about God, has been in areas where I have my most honest doubts.
Yeah, right.
And like, if we go into that deep for a couple of seconds, honest doubts. I think we have surface level doubts, and we'll get into this in some of the later episodes when people often have their question, what about this and what about that? They don't really, like those questions we often bring up, isn't the stuff that really bothers us. It's the honest doubts we have, the stuff that can keep us up at night. You know, there's stuff that, I don't know if I believe it, but I go to sleep at night fine. But there's other things, it's an honest doubt in me.
Yeah.
And it's when I think often, you know, some much smarter, wonderful thinkers than I have unpacked this idea around that, you know, we're more closer to God than when we have questions and when we feel like we have all the answers.
Yeah.
Think of that. We're closer to God when we have questions than when we think we have all the answers.
Yeah.
So when I've got questions and doubts, I don't allow them to push me away.
Yeah.
I let them draw me to and come back, you know, maybe it's a beautiful full circle moment. Look at Thomas. He had doubts, but where was he?
Yeah. He was at the feet of Jesus.
He was still there,
was
where the
with
talk
Jesus.
was,
Yeah.
where the people had hope were. He had doubts. He didn't walk away. He still kept rocking up where all the disciples were, where people had testimony. He didn't allow his doubts to make him run away from faith. His doubts kept leading him until he had his moment. His moment for the questions that he had. He had the question, and Jesus met him at the point of his
I love
questions.
that. Jesus rocks up.
Oh, man. Man. So I'm conscious that Jesus can meet us at the point of our doubts. Doubts don't dismiss faith. They encourage us to believe even deeper and to pull us further. And it's been certainly the doubts I've had and the questions I've had that have enabled me to go further in my faith. That sounds simple, but you know, I'm 40. I've been following Jesus my whole life now. I remember going through uni. I was hit with questions that I didn't have good answers for. And rather than throwing my faith out, and this is important if you're in uni here and thinking about this, and there's a lot of big questions, more than ever these days, particularly in the age we live in, and you've touched on that. We'll touch on this in a later episode. We're in an age of relativity and post-truth.
Yeah.
Allow your doubts to take you further in, not push you further out.
Yeah.
There is good reason to believe, and we'll delve into them. There's good reasons to have hope.
Yeah.
And so if you're doubting, you know, if you're doubting, pull that string.
Yeah.
Follow that along.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty confident. It might take 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. In 10 years' time, you'll either...
it'll probably take the rest of your life.
I hope so.
Like, you know, like it's such an exciting journey to be on.
You got it.
And what I love about it as well is that we are not in an age where people are like, I want to find out the information from you. Like, we don't need other people to find out information. We can go to ChatGPT. We can go to Google. We can read books. Like, there's like, how much content is there?
Too much.
No, actually, how much is there?
Yeah. I love it.
But I think the beauty of what we've talked about today is that it's information that's relevant. And why is it relevant? It's because people are friends with you. People know you. They trust you. And rather than just going to ChatGPT or some place to get answers that they can care or not care about and probably won't care about, they're actually meeting it through a person that they know, that they love. And if you've thought through your reasons and they know your story, it's like, man, what a 1-2 punch. It's like they're not hearing this disembodied truth. They're hearing the truth in love because it's in the context of your relationship.
Why do you believe?
With them. And they'll probably listen, even if they disagree. Yeah. They'll probably take some of it to
Which
heart.
is a good apologetic. Like your life is an apologetic.
Right.
It's a defense of the faith.
So even if you're being like, hey, honest, if you're honest with your friends about your doubts, they'll see that and they'll see the genuineness of that. And even if you don't have all the answers, they'll be like, whoa, there's a person on the journey.
But I think we underestimate even just how we live is a defense. Yeah. You know, like take pain, for instance, and we'll get into that soon, another episode about evil and suffering and pain, you know, if God's real, where's that, you know, and that's a good conversation, but how you journey through pain. Yeah. If you do it with courage and hope and honesty and joy and tears rather than despair and anger, that's a defense. That will cause people to go, you've tapped into something that, nihilism, atheism, none of these ideas offer resources for us, but you have a hope. What is the well that you've tapped into?
Yeah.
Your life should be the greatest defense.
Yeah. I love that. We want to be really practical at the end of these episodes and just point people towards resources. So if we're sort of just coming to the coalface of apologetics and we just want like a starting point, are there any books, podcasts, like what content?
Yeah.
we
Again,
start to consume?
we can talk about more heavier stuff in later episodes, but this is a good introduction to it. I recommend it. There's other people. Just do a quick Google search. But for me personally, what's been formative in my life in my younger years was Mere Christianity from C.S. Lewis.
Yep.
That is an apologetic masterpiece. And most people that write anything about apologetics quote that book. Go to the source.
Yeah. Just give a flyover of the approach, because it's a really cool approach that he took to the writing of that book, right? Like, because he started at square one with like just everyday life, everyday questions that even non-Christians would answer about like morality. Like if someone doesn't give up their seat on the bus, like why do I think that's right or wrong? Where did I get this idea? And so it's kind of like just very...
Yeah, well, it's not theological, right? It's an apologetic for why faith is a real thing. That's why, to your point, and he was writing this in war era Britain, where their society was fraying at the edges. They had young men dying, and people had big questions. Where's God in this? And so he wrote to a very real tension that people were feeling. And in the modern era, I'd say a book that picked up on that and started answering questions that this postmodern age is wrestling with is from the great Tim Keller, The Reason for God. In fact, it's one of the books we give all new Christians in our church, along with the Bible. Yeah, great. It's just because, again, every chapter he kind of bookends it with, these are questions that happened at a university or at our church. There's obviously some great podcasts out there. Questioning Christianity with Dan Patterson, Aussie guy, brilliant. Undeceptions with John Dixon. He's another Aussie. It's a great one. Wes Huff. It's obviously all the rage right now. And keep your eyes peeled for Sophos Ministries content as well. So that's your stuff to get you going, both books and podcasts to start.
Yeah, great. Well, I hope that's been encouraging to you guys today. Stay tuned for next episodes. And I guess our heart is, like, you don't necessarily have to consume this content like systematically, like from start to finish. I'd encourage you to jump into different topics that interest you, particularly based on what we've said today of like, where are your curiosities? Where are your doubts? What's your story? And how can you sort of start to pull those threads? So looking forward to the rest of these episodes.
Let's do it.
Great.